What is going on, guys? Chip here. Welcome back to another Pokemon TCG video where today I'm joined by Isaiah Williams coming off of an absolutely insane season. Really solid finishes at regional championships this year. Of course, the Oceania International Champion and capping the season off with a top 8 at the World Championships. Isaiah, how you doing, man? How you feeling?
Doing great. I'm really happy with how I did this year. Felt like I had a goal in mind when I started the season, and I've done even better than I expected. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get into this deck, we're going to talk about, where the whole idea for this deck came. Obviously, this was a totally rogue deck coming in, not something anyone was prepared for or was expecting. Why don't you just introduce yourself real quick, someone who might not know who you are, where you're from, and a little bit of your background in the game.
Absolutely. So I'm Isaiah Williams. I started playing Pokemon in Mississippi in around 2010, 2009. I was 10 years old. Because my first event ever, I was a junior, and I went to a pre-release.
Nice.
I think it was for Rising Rivals. I could be wrong though. But pretty much, I just started playing casually in 2012. I won a state tournament as a senior in Mississippi. Got the $300 to go to nationals, and kind of got hooked from there.
Nice.
So I kept playing in tournaments. Then eventually, I feel like my breakout accomplishment, which a lot of people don't know about actually. In 2014, my first year as a master, I got top 4 at U.S. Nationals with the Battle Guard. And then I took a 2-year break from Pokemon and came back. My first tournament back, I went to San Jose Regionals, got 9th, and I was like, ooh, so close. I got to keep playing now. And then, yeah, that's where it all started.
And from there, we went to the insane season that we just kind of talked about here where, you took a year off from school and it really paid off because you committed fully to Pokemon and got that internationals win and capped it off with the World Championships. Like you said, got to be feeling really solid about how the year ended up for you. So yeah, we're looking at the Pidgeotto control deck coming in, and I think before the tournament, everyone kind of in the back of their mind probably expected your testing group to come up with some sort of control-esque deck. How did the decision come to Pidgeotto, though? Where did Pidgeotto come from? Kind of a card I don't think was on a lot of people's radar.
Yeah, I mean, it is very reasonable for us to play a control deck. I was telling the testing group the whole weekend, if I were someone trying to think of what we would play, I would guess we'd play Shed.
Yep.
And I think the thing about Pidgeotto is that we tested all the matchups in the meta, which is what we do for every event. Kind of played each game, kind of King of the Hill style, figured out what the best decks were. Came up with Reshizard and Pika being the best, and Malamar kind of there as well. And then Jimmy and Caleb were playing games one night, and they're getting really deep into it. And they came up with Mareep control, which was using Mareep to make them go to sleep, and then they had the stadium that makes them flip twice.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had Pidgeotto and Stamp and Guru and all that good stuff. And they were I remember Jimmy, he's it's 5 a.m. He was yo, you up? Get on Discord real quick. And so I jumped on Discord, and they were playing games with it, and it was just crushing it was crushing all the top decks that we had been testing. Just because the red card Surge Mars Chip Lock is unbreakable. You can perfectly manipulate the board state because you know what cards your opponent has, and you're playing energy removal, you're playing Articuno, which completely stops the active Pokemon, you're playing Plant. So if they have any tricks like Weavile GX or something like that, you can get rid of that. And once we started playing the deck, we realized Mareep was good and it slowed down the game a lot. But we're really still playing the game to get to that 2 price point where we stand 2 and double Mars. And so we really didn't need Mareep, and we just kind of cut it, put in more consistency, more control cards, more crushing hammers. And yeah, that's kind of how the deck was born.
Yeah, and obviously ended up working out pretty well. I believe You finished obviously in the top 8. Danny, I think, got top 32, and then Igor
Mm-hmm.
Costa ended up winning one of the DC Open pods with the same deck. So
Yeah,
really solid,
wonderful.
really solid showing for the deck over the weekend. So we're just gonna talk. I'm gonna ask you a couple questions, kind of about the deck list and just kind of
Okay.
how certain things ended up making their way into it. I think one of the first surprises and probably one of the more unexpected things for a lot of people once they saw the list or maybe played against you at Worlds was the double Articuno GX. Articuno GX is
Mm-hmm.
a card we've seen be played in a lot of control-esque decks for Cold Crush just to be able to discard all the energy off of a threat. But you guys opted for 2 copies of this card, and through hearing you guys talk through some matchups, it sounds like it ended up being a solid attacker for you at certain times. Do you want to just talk through what Articuno GX is really in the deck for and why the second copy was needed?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a pretty like funny story. So like when I was in top 8 against Shintaro, he like I could tell like he had a plan, and his plan was accounting for me only playing one Articuno, and one of my Articunos was in the discard pile. And when he did it, I benched the second Articuno and did the legendary ascent and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And like when I did that, he was like freaking out. He was like, "What?" Like, and he like picked up my discard pile and like riffled through it and saw the Articuno, and then looked at my board and saw the second Articuno, and he's like, "Ah, I see." And I don't know. It was so funny. So,
That's great.
uh, but yeah, so I think like okay, the primary reason for the double Articuno is actually really simple, and it's like to not prize it because it's so critical to the strategy of the deck that like because you need to use the Cold Crush and you need to attack in a lot of situations that if it's in one of your prize cards, like that game just might not be winnable. And with this deck, we need to win game 1 because it's such a like drawn out process that if you're not winning game 1, you're probably not winning the set.
Sure.
You're definitely not winning the set, and to the best you can tie, maybe by winning a game 2. And so like playing 2 decreases the odds of prizing it from 10% to 1%, which is something that's like over the course of 7 rounds in the top 8 is a lot more reasonable and safer. So like I'll give you an example of something I did with Articuno. Like I was playing against Will Jenkins, and game 1 he was playing the Pika Judge deck,
Mm-hmm.
and game 1 he judged me to 4, and I just completely dead drew and he beat me.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, dang, game 1's over, so like the best I could possibly do is tie here. Game 2 went a lot better because I got to go first before he could judge me. And I set up my board state. Everything was going well, and I actually ended up getting him into the chip lock. And then, but time was running out, and I knew I had like 10 minutes left maybe. So once I had his hand locked to 0, and I was chip chipping him dead cards, I literally would just go on one turn, I would go resource back double chip. Then the next turn, I would Tate into Articuno, swing for 130, because once he's locked, I have enough time to attach 3 energies to my Pokemon.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And swing for 130, and then I would Tate again, so that's double Tate, back into resource, and resource back double chip. So it's an alternating in between those two. And then you also resource back Stamp. So once you chip like 3 or 4 dead cards into their hand, just to be safe, you can just stamp their hand back into the deck so that you can chip those same dead cards again. Just because it increases the odds, right?
Mm-hmm.
With more dead cards in their deck. So yeah, Articuno, and that game I ended up taking my 6th prize card on turn 3, so it was perfect. On turn 3 of time.
Yeah.
And so it worked out great. Also, double Articuno is good for another reason, and that's against the Nagandel matchup. So I didn't actually get to execute this strategy against Shintaro because he started Dedenne and played Nagandel GX, which really threw things off, and he trained GX.
Mm-hmm.
But if they play like quad Nagandel, just that, and play, then you actually can't win the game without double Articuno because they'll just have 4 Nagandel and they'll just keep hitting for 80 over and over and over and over. And you don't need a hand to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the thing though that you can do is with double Articuno, you can at the end of the game when you get them in the lock with Chipchin, you can legendary ascent, hit for 130. Okay, so that's knockout. They hit you for 80. Then you take another knockout. They hit you for 80 again. And that was an issue with running. So if they had 3 Nagandel in play, your 1 Articuno would die from just being attacked, right?
Yeah.
But with double Articuno, you just pinch your second Articuno and Legendary Ascent, and I can kill all four.
Yeah, yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so that was like a super, like, it's definitely a niche thing, but it was like, oh, awesome. So if we take this count to 2, we reduce the chance of prizing it and beat a matchup because of it. And I feel like there's so many cards in this deck where we just figured out a game plan to not have to play another card to beat the matchup. Instead, we just like doubled here, or like completely took this card out, and it made it to where we were fighting against the matchups that we were worried about.
Nice. Yeah, definitely a solid explanation there. Showing that the second Articuno definitely worth the spot. Another thing I wanted to ask you about, this is actually kind of just a personal thing, especially after hearing your reasoning, the main reasoning for playing the second Articuno is not prizing it. You do only have one copy of Brock's Grit, which seems like a pretty important card to like not deck out to keep the lock going. If you're like, especially if you have those situations where you're having to attack with Articuno and not resource every turn. Was that kind of just like a calculated risk, only playing the one Brock's without like something like Gladian in the format?
Yeah, so I mean, Brock's Grit is a card that you don't actually need to win the game. Like, it just makes it really easy to get all those energies and Pokemon you had to discard early back. But like, theoretically, you can just resource back the cards that you had Brock's Grit back. So playing one is a fine risk, just because it's not a necessary part of the strategy.
Yeah. And then one other thing
I want to say, it's kind of like Palpad in that way, because. But the thing is about Palpad is that it's so efficient because it literally turns a resource management into 2 cards. So like it's like one of those. That was definitely like the 60th card was the second Palpad.
Okay.
And if there's anything that anyone wanted to cut from the deck, I would say it'd be the second Palpad. If they wanted to like change up the text a little bit. But I think for the tournament that we played, playing that consistency was like key to being able to keep the lock going.
For sure. And another question I wanted to ask, for someone who might look at this list and be really confused as to why there's only 3 copies of Custom Catcher, maybe if someone's not really familiar with like these, control-y type decks, why is only 3 copies of this card necessary?
Yeah, so it's just the same, like, we wanted to play an extra copy of a card just so we don't prize it, because you only need 2 Custom Catcher in the game.
Yeah.
Just so you can like bring something up so they can't retreat it and then establish the lock. So you played 3, so if one gets prized, you're good to go. So we can still, like 10% to 1.
For sure.
And then also, like, playing a third Custom Catcher is great because it's a consistency card. Like, I can't tell you how many times I actually Custom Catcher for 3 cards during the event. It was insane.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly, I kind of think I'm interested to see how, like, maybe cutting a bike would, for a Custom Catcher would work, because it's still a consistency card, so you don't really lose that. And you just get more consistent on how well you can like stream Custom Catcher.
Sure, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So leading up to the tournament, once you guys kind of decided that, okay, this is the deck we want to play, was there anything you think that, since obviously all of those of you who wanted to play this deck were day 2 auto-qualified, do you think there's anything that could have happened in day 1 that would have potentially scared you off of this deck? Or were you pretty set heading into Friday?
I mean, if everyone was playing like Zebstrika based decks, attacking decks, then I probably would have been a bit scared to play it, just because like sprint beats this lock, right?
Sure.
Like if their hands in zero, they're like, all right, I'll just draw. It doesn't really work. But like there's not really any deck like that played that. So pretty much like the only scenario where we don't play this deck is where like Pikas are playing 2/2 zones in their decks.
So you were like definitely very set on this heading in.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Very set, because it's just the concept works. It's like it's not about beating a type of deck or like a certain like scenario. It's like it's taking advantage of like the fundamental way the game of Pokemon plays.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So. Just real quick before we hop into any other questions, I wanted to ask if you could just briefly, like for anyone who might not quite, like who might look at this list and be like, how does this deck even work? Since it's definitely very different from a normal attacking to take your 6 prizes type of Pokemon deck. What would you say like the general strategy is, and how do you ultimately through the course of the game get to the point where you've got your opponent hand locked?
Yeah. So I mean, to start off the game, your entire priority is to get your 3 Pidgeottos online, which this deck is awesome. It's actually a ridiculous setup engine because you play Elm twice and you have 3 Pidgeottos in play.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can Elm for Pidgeotto, so it's like if Zoroark could bridge it for Zorgas and Zorarks at the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
time. And after that, you're really just kind of like giving your opponent prize cards. You're letting them knock things out while like messing them with crushing hammers and getting lost. So like against Malamar, you like hit early crushing hammers and get lost their psychic energies, and it actually like they're like stuck. Like if you hit 2 energies like that, and like the first 2 turns or four, like or even the first 4 turns of the game, they're gonna pass a few times before they get some more play.
Yeah.
And that just gives you more time to draw your entire deck because like that's what you want. By the time they hit 2 prizes, you want to deck yourself out and have like 20 cards in your hand so you can go. So you can do like the huge combo where you go Surge, Stamp to 2 because they take 4 prizes. Mars, you draw 4 off of that, which is awesome. So like doing the lock itself advances your hand, and then you chip them, and then you chip a dead card on top, so their hand's 0, and they have a card that they can't play on top of their deck, and then you either legendary send Articuno to get rid of all the energies they have on their active, or like you throw the 3 or 4 crushing hammers that you have in your hand to see if you don't even need to use it, which happens a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can double custom pitch or something up on the bench that they they won't be able to retreat since their card in their hand is dead. And then you just resource management back the cards that you need to keep maintaining this lock, like more reset stamps. Chip is the best card at maintaining the lock, of course, because you're controlling their hand. So you always want 2 of those in your hand. And yeah, you're just going resource management, chip, Mars away, or like chip, resource management, chip, resource management. And you actually don't want to Mars away the dead cards in their hand because you want to put them back in the deck after a while so you can chip into them again. And then from there, the way you win is either crushing hammer away all the energies they have in play, and then or you can go alternate in between Articuno attack and a Rangaroo resource, because you can do it each turn and resource back double chip.
Nice. Okay. Well, there's a good little rundown of the deck for anyone who might not be quite sure how this thing works, but after hearing that, hopefully you got an idea of it. So why don't you give us just a quick little rundown of what that second day of the tournament looked like for you? What did your rounds go like? Is there anything specific that stood out to you? Any matches that you definitely remember?
Yeah. So I think a big thing that really helped me in this event particularly is that I was really fixated on the Malamar matchup against this deck because I felt like that was our hardest matchup. So I was like, I don't care about grinding other games because I feel like I can beat them most of the time anyways. But I really, really want to grind out the Malamar matchup, make sure I know that ins and out 100%. And because I just want to make sure I know the other matchups and I knew the other matchups, but like I played probably 40 games of Malamar versus Pidgeotto in the 3 days leading up to the event on both sides of the decks. And I played a lot of games with Jimmy. I played a lot of games with Igor, and I played a lot of games with everyone really. But me and Igor were talking about it, and we think that's a reason that we both did so well because I hit 3 Malamars and he hit a lot of Malamars. So in those situations, I knew exactly what card to play when. Out of I could have any combination of cards in my hand, and I felt like I knew the exact line of play to the T to do against Malamar. Whereas the Malamar players are probably like, "What's going on? Why does he have Pidgeottos on his board? What plays do we make?" But I was actually super impressed because people were playing it almost perfectly. They're using Espeon Deoxys to take multiple skill the Pidgeottos at once. They were using Mimikyu to copy resource management. And the thing was, the reason that I wanted to play the Malamar matchup is because I saw those lines of play when I was thinking about how the decks interacted, and I wanted to make sure the deck could still beat it, which it definitely could. And in my opinion, I think if both players play the matchup perfectly, it's like a straight up 50-50.
Okay.
But if the Pidgeotto player knows the matchup and the Malamar player is playing it for the first time, it's like 90-10 in the Pidgeotto favor, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I feel like even the best players, like they just don't know what R60 is. So it's hard to think about the counterplay without knowing the 60.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of the biggest advantages of playing a rogue deck like this into a tournament is like
exactly
you're prepared for what you're going to face, but your opponent sitting across the table likely has never even considered, like even, theoried what a matchup like this would look like.
Exactly. And like during the tournament, I played against 3 Malamars, and I won all 3 of them. So, like, I just felt like that was like a really strong advantage I had going into the event, and I got pretty lucky to play against 3 of like a matchup that I felt really experienced in and comfortable.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, like you said, it definitely seems like the amount of time you spent testing that one specific matchup certainly paid off.
Absolutely.
All right, so running through Swiss, was there any other, like, you kind of talked about that game with Will Jenkins, and, you've had the 3 games with Malamar. Is there any other matchups you remember well?
Yeah, there was, so, like, I'm really bad about knowing what cards do, or, like, looking at new sets in general. Like, I know how to play the game of Pokemon very well, I feel like, but I don't know, like, the cards that exist in any given meta. So, like, I was playing against like a Guardian player, and he's a guy from Japan. And I mean, I feel like all of my anecdotes from my Swiss are just kind of like funny little interactions with how like this lock deck goes, and like my opponent realizing what was going on when it happened. But I was playing against this Guardian player, and he had like taken 5 prizes, and at this point, I could tell like he really didn't know what was going on. He didn't know what was about to come. So I did the full combo. I Articuno'd his Guardian, and I chip-chipped. And when I had him in the chip-chip, so then I was just, at that point in the Guardian matchup, you just start crushing and hammering away all their energy. And then once you crush and hammer away all their energies, you actually just give them an energy. And then they either attach it or hold it, and then you get rid of it when they attach it or hold it. Right. With Mars and Crushing Hammer, right? You do have to be careful though, because if they can use the Guardian's first attack to power up bench guys, but like it's still not that big of an issue because you still know every card in their hand, so they're really just helping you get rid of their energies faster by using them. But at one point, like I was like chip, and he had a great potion, and I didn't actually know what that card did. It's like heal 50 from your active.
That's right, yeah. Active GX or EX.
Active GX or EX. And like I was like, what does this card do? Like I was like playing Chip and asking him what this card does, and he's like, oh, it heals 50. I was like, oh, okay, you can have this one. and like he was laughing about it, but like let's see, what else was there? There was one Malamar player that played Jinx in his deck.
Okay.
Which does a 4 damage spread for 2 psychic energies, or psychic and colorless.
It's for each of your opponent's benched Pokemon, put 1 damage counter on your opponents in any way you like.
And I had 4 in play. And he was alternating in between that and Mew to spread damage across all of my Pokemon and take all the knockouts at once.
Yeah.
And like that's a really cool strategy. Which we had actually tested against, but just not with Jinx. We just only did it with Mew because we didn't assume people would play Jinx with Malamar.
Right. Fair assumption.
So it kind of threw me for a loop, but I ended up winning by just taking 6 prizes before he did.
Okay.
And I was like profound knowledging him and stuff like that. So,
okay.
That was a really fun match. That is kind of a nail biter. There's definitely times during that match where I was like, okay, I don't know who's gonna win this game. We'll find out. Like, at least I have a 15 card hand and he has a 0 card hand, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And besides that, this one's really bad. It was a huge misplay on my part. It was my one loss against Zach Kruckler. Okay, so he's playing Dark Box. And Dark Box is, like, one of the freest matchups, I think. Because they have Weavile, which can make things tricky, so they move the energies around. So if they ever get that bump power plant play and get the energies in play, then you have to reset the lock, and it gets really annoying, right? But you can make sure they don't get a counter stadium by chip, so not too big of a deal. And I thought, like, so he went down to 2 prizes, and I had the full combo. And I was like, oh, okay, I got this game. It's over. And I decided to bench an Articuno because he was going to knock out my active. I was gonna let him knock out my active so I could stamp to 1 and do the play easier with less resources, and then Articuno the guy, whatever guy he knocked me out with. But I knew his hand was dead because of I forgot why I knew his hand was dead, but like there's no way he could like double custom catch me or anything like that. And so I was looking at his board. He hadn't used GX, by the way. So I looked at his board and I was like, okay, Weavile does 130. That's fine. So he can't kill Articuno, even if he has a double custom catcher. And Hoopa GX does 160. So that's fine. He can't kill me with my Articuno, even if he has a double custom. And
I feel like I know where this is going.
I didn't read the GX attack on Hoopa.
Yeah.
And so he goes, I bench the Articuno, get the energy on it, ready to go. And he's just like, retreat GX with Hoopa game. And I'm like, are you serious? How did I not notice that? And like, that's what I'm saying. Like, all my gameplay is full of mistakes like that. Like, I do correct lines of play, and like I'm playing the game as well as possible, but there's always like something stupid that I do to mess up.
Well, you know, we all have those moments for sure, and
yeah,
luckily ended up not hurting you here in this tournament for sure.
Exactly.
All right, so it's
like when you make like mistakes like that. I had to like kind of tell myself like not to get tilted by that, because sometimes it's like you make a mistake like that and you're like, dang, that was the game that decided if I did well or not in this tournament. Because you're like, if I wouldn't have done that, then I would be 4-0 right now, or like 3-0 right now.
Yeah,
very well said. But I had to like kind of chill after that round, get back in the zone, you know.
Yeah, get your mental state back to focused and feeling good about it.
Exactly.
All right, so as Swiss is concluding, as you realize you're going to be in the top 8 and you're kind of getting a feel for what the other decks are going to be in the top 8, was there anything that you didn't want to face, or were you feeling pretty good throughout the tournament about your potential matchups?
Yeah, I was feeling decent against like all the decks in top cut, but like I think Nag was the one that I wanted to face the least, just because I didn't have nearly as much matchup experience as the other ones. Like, we had the game plan with the double Articuno, but like, any kind of different tech can kind of throw that for a loop, which did end up happening with the Heatran GX and the Ganondale GX. And like, if I would have hit like a Zard or a Pika, or like Mewtwo box, I feel like it would have been easy win, but Shintaro was definitely the one that I didn't want to face. But like, it wasn't like I was like, dang, like I hit Shintaro, this is impossible now. Like, I still had a plan. Yeah. But he's a great player, and he had a plan as well. So
for sure, yeah, Shintaro definitely one of the best players of the last 5 years for sure, and definitely absolutely the best player out of Japan. So do you want to walk through kind of what that matchup ended up looking like? How did those games go? What did it end up coming down to?
You mean how did that game go?
That game. Yes, game.
Yeah, it was actually, I would say it's definitely a contender for the most intricate and like enjoyable game of Pokemon that I've ever played.
Oh wow.
Like, and enjoyable in the sense that like we were really playing Pokemon to like a high level and like making a lot of like cool plays and like trying to outplay each other. Like, we both knew exactly what was going on. He immediately understood what I was going for and like played around it well. So pretty much like I open I start Giraffe and I open like Crushing Hammers and stuff, and so he's getting his energy, he's getting his Nags in play. He opens Dene, which is terrible for him because it's something that can custom catch her up. And I start Giraffe. I'm like, and I go 4 for 4 on my first 4 Crushing Hammers and get lost 4 energies. Like 3 turns into the game. Yeah, it was insane. I was like, oh, this is a great start. And so it really like slowed down the game a lot. And Shintaro was like being very careful about his plays, and I just kind of so it was like 30 minutes into the round when he took his first prize card, and I was like, okay, I don't think I'm gonna be able to deck him out. I'm gonna have to because like I decided that I couldn't deck him out because he was gonna. I felt like by the way the game was going, by the time I could actually deck him out straight up, that it would be 75 minutes, and he would just win game one by having less prize cards.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided like, okay, that's what we're gonna play to like win with Articuno. Um, and so we like went through the whole game. He went down to two prizes, and I I realized in that state like, okay, I need so I chipped him earlier in the round, and I saw the Heatran GX. And I didn't actually know what that card did. So it's like when they retreat, you can take all the fire energies and play and move it onto Heatran.
Yeah. Anytime it
And
moves from the bench to the active.
yeah, and the GX attack does like 50 times the number of energies on Heatran, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I saw that card and I was like, okay, so he could like end the game with that, like because he has 9 energies to play on his two Meganadels, just retreat one and take a KO, right? Uh, so I kept that in mind. But I ended up having to like stamp him. I put down Articuno and Legendary Ascendant to get 2 energies onto it, and then I tated to swap the Articuno back to the bench. Oh, by the way, he had Nagandel GX in play,
Mm-hmm.
and he was thinning his deck to the point to where it was all Ultra Beast, Stadiums, Energies, and Supporters. So that means even if I chip, right, like I'm gonna hit an Ultra Beast, so I have to have a plan in play as well. So it was just really reducing the number of outs that I could possibly give him to keep his hand blocked,
Mm-hmm.
which is how you play against the deck. Uh, and so I Articuno Legendary Ascended, and got the 2 energies on Articuno. I tated it back to the bench, and I chipped him that turn, and then I resourced. He also stamped me right when he went down to two prizes, which is the like best play to make against this deck because when you go down to two prizes, that's when I'm about to like get in, like stamp, search, Mars, do the full combo. So if you stamp me going into that turn, I have to rebuild it in 2 turns. I have 2 turns to do it, or you'll just win, right? So he recognized that, of course, and made that play. And so I'm like trying to rebuild the hand with air mills and things like that. I had like thinned my deck fairly well just because it took so long to get to that point. So I found most of the pieces quickly, and it's just I wasn't finding the Mars, which you really need to find to rebuild the hand because you can kind of like Mars helps you rebuild the hand. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Not just disruption, but drawing the 2 cards, of course.
Right. And so when we got to that point, the Articuno was on the bench, and he started draw passing for a few turns, and I was like, okay, he's draw passing. I have a power plant in play, so he can't do the Heatran play. I know he has double custom pitcher left. I know he's got one Cynthia left, and I know he's got like one fire energy at the most left, and I know he has Heatran, and I don't know that he has a stadium left though, and I'm not sure because I've discarded like 2 or 3 at this point. Because that's what I was thinking. Okay, so he needs a bump stadium, double custom catcher Articuno, and play down Heatran to win. And so I essentially reached the point where like I air meld, and then the last 5 cards in my deck, I would be able to take them and do full combo, win on the next turn. And right before that happened, I drew a stamp on my last airmail, and I was like, I could play this now, or I could wait till next turn and do the full combo. And that's where I made my mistake. I was greedy and decided to wait until the next turn to stamp and do the full combo. What I should have done is stamp there to make sure that he couldn't do his stadium custom catcher Heatran GX play, even though he was draw passing. Or I at least should have chip to make sure the top deck wasn't one of those things. But I was just thinking like next turn I can do it. Next turn, right? That was like all I was saying in my head. And and then I could have like put the stamp back in, of course, and Cynthia to refind it. Mm-hmm. And so even because he would have gone down to 1 prize and fine. And honestly, like I was thinking, like there's no way he has it all, and like he's just gonna hit my active for 80, with his Nagandel. And like, of course, that turn he goes Bump Stadium, then some cards out of his deck with the Viridian he played down. Cynthia, he's got like 12 cards in deck. Draw six, plays discards an Ultra Beast to draw three more,
Yeah.
and double Custom Catcher.
Yeah.
And then that's game with Heatran. And so yeah, that's how that happened. And it was like insane game. Like, and he's like, he thinned his deck perfectly to where he had, because like even in that scenario, it wasn't perfect, right? He still had like, I think like five cards left in deck. Um, After the end, so it was still possible for him to lift the double custom catcher, but like it was great. It was awesome for him to like recognize that was the turn. He knew that if he waited even a single more turn, then like he couldn't then anymore. He had to go for the chance, and he was favored for sure to hit double custom catcher just because he had more cards in his hand than he had left in deck. So.
Dang, yeah, sounds like a pretty intense game there, especially with, you know, a lot on the line between top 8 and top 4. But still an awesome finish to the season. Like we said earlier, you know, your season was nuts, and finishing it off with a top 8 is definitely something you should feel proud of, especially with a very unique and unknown deck like this one. So good job, man. Definitely a solid finish to the year.
Thank you.
So moving forward, and I guess looking back as well, obviously the result for you was super solid. Do you think there's any room for improvement with the list, or do you feel like this is probably, if someone wanted to play, for some reason wanted to play a Rangaroo Pidgeotto control, is this the best 60 for them to go with?
Yeah, I think the 60 is. There's only one change that I would want to make. The thing is that like I say that, but I don't know what I would cut for it. I want to play, and like my teammates are gonna hate me for saying this because I was saying it the whole time before the event. But I want to play. I think I told you about it too at the tournament. I want to play one Lavender Town, and that's so when you have your opponent in the lock, you can know not to Mars away the dead cards, and so it just makes the lock like infinite because you can just once they get a good card, you just stamp it. You like stamp them back in, Mars them back to 0, and then all their dead cards are all back into the deck. Like you don't because the thing is like if you're Marsing, to me it felt kind of weird because you're giving them dead cards and Marsing them away. So eventually their deck's just going to be all good cards.
Right.
But with Lavender Town, you can make sure that's not the case. It's probably not necessary, but there were situations against certain decks, and like against, well, I guess against Chitara had a plant in play, so that doesn't really matter. But there are situations against certain decks where that's the difference between winning or losing, especially in like the Malamar matchup. Like if you have Lavender Town, it's I think almost an auto win. If you don't, it's 50-50. And so yeah, that's it. Maybe also like I don't know if Igor played one escape board.
Okay.
He played one less Rangaroo. He played an extra Cynthia, and he played one less Tate and Liza. So minus Rangaroo, minus Tate and Liza for Cynthia board. And like that makes sense, right? Because if you have a board on a Pidgeotto, it's kind of like having an Rangaroo because you can just go into the Rangaroo.
Right.
And I think that's actually better because then you can have 4 Pidgeotto and play in some matchup and just bench the Rangaroo and retreat into it every turn instead of having 2 Gurus down.
Yeah.
And also it does like a weird thing with the Articuno where you can get the unit energy back by attaching to the board, and then a legendary is sending into the second one for the nag strategy. So like little things like that.
So moving forward in the meta, like as people, you know, play in League Cups in the coming weeks, and even looking forward to Atlantic City in a few weeks, where do you think this deck sits in the meta?
Well, don't play this out of cup. You're gonna have a terrible time. Your opponent's gonna have a terrible time. There's gonna be so many ties. Like you're a terrible person if you play this in a cup.
So do you not feel confident in the deck's ability to like finish the one game in 30 minutes?
I mean, you have to go really fast. It can. I'm not gonna say it can't be done, but it's not gonna be fun.
Okay.
And like, also, cups have a different energy to them where like you can't. It's like weird to like be like you're taking a long time, and a cup when like they're like newer players or like a mom or something like that,
Yeah.
and it's just gonna. I just play an attacking deck at a cup. Atlantic City, I think this deck could be good still there too. I think it could. I mean, the strategy still works. There's not really an easy way to counter it, and like people, won't be teching Zepstrike into their deck.
Sure.
Or I say that, but now that I said that, they might. And yeah, I think it is good. And when they print more control cards, like Jesse and James, it only gets better.
Yeah, that's what the thing I was going to follow up with is, like, do you think Jesse and James has a place in this deck? Because that card will be legal for Atlantic City.
Wow. Yeah. So I I don't know what Pokemon plans to do about it. Like the stamp Jesse James. Jesse James seems ridiculous. Uh, like because then you can do the lockout 4 prizes, and you have so much more wiggle room. Because like you can drop the lock 3 times in that situation and still win.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's gonna be pretty crazy. So yeah, test that.
Do you think we might see Jesse James be a card that's like only legal for one tournament? Do you think it's like that kind of issue? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, they already banned it and expanded. I'm surprised they haven't. And standard, it's good for the same reasons. Like I guess like expanded, they banned it immediately because they're like, oh, egg makes it to where it's like a free card, but like
I guess also with like red card and Marshadow, you can do it immediately, basically.
Get there like right off. Okay, but right off the bat, yeah, that's true. But like with this deck, like if I can discard. First of all, I want to discard cards out of my hand to the late game because I don't want to redraw them, and like getting rid of 4 cards, so like guarantee the lock. Sign me up,
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there we go. It sounds like everyone's going to have a real fun time in Atlantic City playing against Jesse James decks. But
oh yes.
All right. Well, I really appreciate your time, Isaiah. Thank you so much for your insight into the deck. Anyone who had any questions about it definitely had them answered through this video. I think you gave a lot of good information, so I definitely appreciate it. So as we close things out, definitely want to give you a chance to do any sort of plugs or for your social medias or shout outs for teammates and sponsors, things like that. So feel free, man. Floor is yours.
Oh yeah. Well, if you guys haven't already, it'd be awesome to follow me on Twitter at the Isaiah W. It's capital T, capital I, capital W. So I won't be playing as much this year, but I will still be going to some events, and I'll still be messing around with Pokemon cards. I feel like I'll probably be doing that for the rest of my life. So, yeah, and shout out to my team. They're the best team in the game, Team Deadjaw Gaming. And shout out to my testing group, the gang. You guys are awesome, and it's been a great year.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Absolutely, man. You killed it this season. Congrats once again. Definitely hope to see it some more tournaments through the year, even if you are taking kind of a step back. And I will definitely be leaving links to the Twitter and stuff down below, so you guys can follow Isaiah there. And thanks again for coming on, man.
Awesome.
And
thank you.
Thank you guys so much for watching. That is going to do it for us. We're going to get out of here. And until next time, take care.